Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Secure the Seat Live. I'm your host, Minda Hartz, and I'm so happy that you all are here. You could be anywhere on the internet or outside the house. So I appreciate that you still show up with us on Mondays if you're watching live. This is a good opportunity for you to ping somebody, tag them right now on LinkedIn, and let them know that the conversation that we're about to have is one they don't want to miss. And then if you are able to stay with us the whole time, make sure that you go over to our YouTube page, put in Secure the Seat, and you can see every episode that we put back on there. So for the last couple of years during the pandemic, I switched from doing more of an audio podcast to a live version on LinkedIn. So you can see all of those episodes on our YouTube page. So sometimes listening to things 2 and 3 times hit different at a certain time when you need them most. So I'm excited for today's conversation for a lot of reasons, but I put me in quotations, but Vivian, a few years ago, and she invited me on her show and we talked about the memo, and it's just been awesome to stay connected with those who are not in the United States. And I think it's really important for us to have a global conversation about what it's like to be a woman of color or a Black woman not in the United States, and how we can also help each other and support each other, because many of us are experiencing some of the same systems in different places. And so when Vivian, we were talking about having a conversation, and then she told me about Hilary, and I said, you know what, we need to have a conversation. Let's do a roundtable, and let's talk about what it means to advance women of color in the EU. And so for those who may not be familiar, the European Union, and I am not very good at history, so they'll correct me when they get on here, but I think there's 27 countries within the EU. So I'm sure there's a lot of different perspectives to being a woman of color and a Black woman, even where they sit. And so we all need to be helping each other. It's not just a I'm in California thing, or I'm in New York thing, or this is a United States thing. Equity should be accessible to every one of us. And so that's very important. And maybe there's some things that we can learn from each other to help encourage each other along the way. So get your popcorn ready, get it all. Again, tag somebody in the chat. I know many of you are watching us primarily on LinkedIn, but there are people watching us on Facebook and Twitter and obviously YouTube. So make sure that you connect. But without further ado, we're going to jump into this conversation, because I've been waiting to have this conversation, and I'm sure now that you know that it's happening that you want to hear about it too. So I'm going to bring them both to the stage right now. Hello, how are you both?
Hi, Minda. I'm doing well.
Hi, Minda. Thank you for inviting us.
Oh, I'm so happy that you're here, and I know the time differences, so I appreciate you both for making that extra space. But you know, Vivian, we'll start with you. Tell everybody a little bit more about you, and then Hilary would love to for you to tell a little bit more about the work that you all do, so we can all become fast friends for those who may not be familiar with your work.
Definitely. I am a inclusive workplace wellness advocate. It's a whole mouthful, but I'm basically a DEI coach, DEI consultant, and I support organizations EU-wide, but also in the United States, and that's what I've been doing along the way.
Love it. Hilary?
My name is Hilary Richters. I'm a director at Deloitte. I'm the founder and leader of the digital ethics team. So I really make with the team a difference to create inclusive digital solutions. And next to that, I'm a feminist and activist for having more women in tech, and especially Black women in corporate organizations.
Well, I salute my hat to both of you for the work that you get up and do each and every day. We need you. This is my way of giving you your flowers right now. So thank you. And we'll make sure that we drop your information in the chat so that people can follow you here on LinkedIn and support you and hire you for those things that they may need some extra support in. But let's start with Hilary. I want to ask, what does it mean to be a Black woman in the workplace in the EU?
Oh, in the workplace. So that's a really interesting question. I think about it, but when I look to myself, when I'm with family and friends, I was like living in a world where I was a Black woman, like my Black family and my Black friends. But when I was living in the world, especially here in the Netherlands, but also especially at the workplace, it was like living in a world where color is not seen. You know, you put on your color aside until it feels like it's normal. So I know for myself, when I started, especially in the corporate world, I never thought about I'm a Black woman here, and because of being Black, that is something as you know as a point that we needed to discuss. And in my case, always something happened that you realize that you are a Black woman because you don't fit in or you experience discrimination. Or in my case, it was even a positive thing where a young Black man in my team said, I look up to you. And when I asked him why, he said, you have the same color as me. And when you talk, white men are listening to you. And for me, that was something really special to experience and to understand that our color matter and we need to embrace it. But a lot of people here on the workforce still put it aside to fit in. And I think there we have a long way to go as women of color.
Thank you for that, and for sharing that personal story as well, because I think many of those, whether you're in the Netherlands or you're in the United States or Canada or Brazil, you see yourself and you're like, well, why do we even have to talk about color? But we have to talk about it because there's so many reasons and access that prevent us from having the access and resources because of color, whether people want to acknowledge that or not. And then on the flip side, representation is so important, right, Hilary? Because when someone else sees, oh wow, she's there, I'm there, I can breathe, right? When I see them in the hallway, we know the look of each other, right? We, those sorts of things, it matters. And so thank you for sharing that. Vivian, I'm curious about your perspective and just, sitting at different sides of the table too over the years.
Mm-hmm. So for me, on a personal level, I walked away from the corporate domain because after dealing with a lot of isms, only a few isms that could have harmed me in a really large way, I walked away because I was dealing with microaggression and also bullying during my pregnancy, which could have gone left. But luckily, my son is alive and he's strong. And he's the reason why I'm advocating for diversity, equity, and inclusion. And what I see at the moment right now is a lot of Black women most of the time, they are the only one. If not in their team, then it would be in their organization. And it does a lot. It does a lot with their imposter syndrome. It activates that. It does a lot when they address something or when they address a hurt that things are being diminished as jokes. And I want to make sure that as a Black woman, you need to know your worth. You need to know your value, but also you need to know your allies as well. Find your allies in the workplace because there's so much that we need to do. So I always recommend your book, The Memo, but also recommend Right Within as well. There are so many things that we need to unlearn, but also learn about ourselves to advocate for ourselves.
Ooh, that's so good. These are all tambourine moments right now that you all are dropping, because I appreciate that, Vivian, because sometimes we have to go through a certain situation to realize that we need to be the voice for this, right? Sometimes we're waiting on somebody else to be that voice. I know for me, I was waiting on somebody else to show up and be the voice. And I'm like, you know what? You have your voice, Minda. You just have to decide how you want to use it. And so we all have that. And I think that's really empowering, knowing that we have each other, right? That we're not in this fight alone, right? Because what happens in the EU, it affects the states. What happens in the states affects the EU, right? We are more connected. And I think we see that more and more over the years, how connected we really are. And I'm curious. Oh, yes, Vivian.
I do want to say that sometimes the way that people look at the US, but also at the EU, people think that the EU, just because I'm living in the Netherlands, which is known for the wheat, the cheese, and of course the red light districts, right? Where a lot of people think that the Netherlands is very progressive. It is in a way, but you also have to see the subtle microaggression. You also have to remind that all the isms that take place in the US also take place in the workplace here in the Netherlands and in the EU. It's very subtle. It's very hurting. It's hurting people in a much more way, and it leaves them with a lot of question marks. So sometimes, yes, we look at the US. We don't want to be like the US because there a lot of things are being televised and a lot of things are being recorded. But at the end, there's also a lot of things that people don't see in the EU, which is not being recorded, but is similar to the US as well.
Thank you for mentioning that, because I think it's really important for us to talk about those subtleties, because I know for when I started in my career, it was the subtle acts of racism. I'm like, oh, well, that's not that big of a deal. That's just Tom being Tom, right? Or that's just Susie being Susie. But those cuts, they mount up over time. Those experiences mount up, and they really affect us in many ways. And so, you know, I hope that, for me anyway, I hope that Black women of color across the globe, we will stop putting it's just those little things, right? Oh, it's not that big of a deal. All of these things add up, and they are big deals because they affect us, whether we notice it right now. It will manifest itself in other ways. I know I seen Hilary nodding her head. Did you want to add anything?
Yeah. So a few things I wanted to add. So, but also from us, as you know, as Black women, we also need to embrace more that we are a women of color, and that being with our women of color, we have our own identity, our own uniqueness, and our own grace that can be there. And I see a lot of, especially women of color, are not embracing this enough. And that's also part how we are grown up. We learn also from, for example, if I look to myself, we always learned, you know, you need to work hard, you need to fit in, you need to accept everything. And in my case, there were not a lot of people of color, you know, that I could learn from. You know, actually, still there are not a lot of women of color in top positions in corporate life. So I think it starts also with embracing and loving who we are, and that being Black is something okay, and it needs to be there. It makes us unique and different.
Amen and amen to that. I totally agree with that. And I think for so long, many of us have been conditioned to not bring ourselves to work, right? I know for me, I was the only one working. And so I'm like, ooh, I don't want to be too Black. I don't want to do too much, you know, and I was I don't want to wear too ethnic hairstyles. You know, I just want to fit in. And I think it's harmed many of us because it was a survival tool. But now we know that it's not enough to just survive. It's not enough to just collect the paycheck if we don't make it to 65, right? Because of all the chronic stress or whatever the case, or 75 or 85. And so all of this is very important stuff. And for those watching us, put some comments in the chat, because I know you are feeling everything that both of them are dropping. So put some love in the chat. If you're experiencing this, it's resonating, put a 1 in the chat. The other question that I wanted to ask you all, I could ask you 1,000 questions every day, but we'll start with Vivian. How do you see women of color in the EU and the US partnering to help dismantle some of these systems? Because we're experiencing many of the same things. Right?
Yeah, we're definitely experiencing, but I do have to say that 10 years ago, I'm African, I'm Ghanaian, right? So 10 years ago, talking to me, collaborating with me, doing something with me would mean that you are working and collaborating with an African. And let's see that I wasn't seen as equal. I was seen as less. Now that we are embracing more of our natural hair, now that we are uniting and more people are identifying themselves as coming from the motherland, coming from Africa, you see a lot of unity. But there's also a lot of unlearning that we need to do. Is when you see another woman, greet you, smile at you, please respond and be nice to her as well, because there's a lot of unlearning that we need to do as well. And also, if you see a woman struggling, or if you see a woman dealing with something in the workplace, what can you do to stand up for her? What can you do to become an ally? Maybe not in that moment, because we need to put our oxygen mask on first before we help somebody else. But what can you do so that this situation, the toxicity, the tokenism, all the other isms that Black women are dealing with, or women of color are dealing at the moment, what can we do to change that system?
Preach, preach, preach. I love that so much. And we do need to be allies for each other. That's a very important point. I think sometimes we look at, oh, it's the men that are doing this to us, or this, that, and the other, right? But some of the harm is happening amongst ourselves. And so making sure that we are showing up for each other and being those success partners that I write about in the memo to each other. So thank you for really, and that's something that we all can do. We don't have to wait for someone to give us permission to do that. We can do that at any point. Hilary, would love to hear your thoughts as well.
Yeah, so what I see, so a lot of what Vivian is saying is really recognizable, but what I see more in the corporate life is that specifically women of color, we are still invisible. I cannot say we're not united, but I don't know a group where specific women of color from corporate life or for top positions comes together. So I think we have, maybe there's still not a lot, especially here in the Netherlands, but we still have some steps to make over there. What I do see a lot of positive things is, in a broader sense, is that I see a lot of groups starting with underrepresented groups. So that is bigger than just women of color, just women as a whole, or women from different cultures, and they are united. And I think that is a really, really good thing, because now we can learn and we see that we have similar good things, but also unfortunately bad things where we can learn from each other. When I look to the US, from my own perspective, I see that we can learn also a lot from you, where we see that the women of US, especially the women of color, are much more open. They are more in podcasts. They are more on live shows, telling and experience what they do, but also telling about experience where you can learn from. I think that connection now with the US, between the EU and the US, is really, really strong and really helpful. But I think in this case, especially for women of color here in the Netherlands, on the top level of corporate life, we still have some steps to make in being more visible. I think this is a good thing that we can do, and it's different what we see in the US, I think.
Yeah, great points. I appreciate those from you as well, Hilary. And it makes me think about just the power of the internet, right? Like, even over the last few years, I mean, if we were in a different time period, I never would have been able to connect with Vivian, or it would have been hard, right? We would have been mailing each other cards, talking about things that happened, 6 months ago, and trying to catch each other up on these things. So we appreciate those modes of transportation, but now we can unite and take best practices. We can have conversations in a way that we haven't been able to have them, because we're feeling more confident and comfortable with our voices, right? To say, if we're not going to speak out, we can't wait on somebody else to do it. And so we're leveraging each other's courage from wherever we are. And so thank you for joining me today to have this conversation, because sometimes I think we're in our silos, right? We think it's only happening where we are, but we're more connected, because a win for the EU women of color is a win for the US. The US is a win, and we get to bring those statistics and data points to help with our causes in our different places. So thank you so much for that. And lastly, I want to ask you both, we'll start with Hilary. We're in 2023 right now. It's wild to think about it in that perspective, but what would you like to see companies and organizations doing to support Black women and women of color in the workplace and beyond?
So I would say a few things. One, be curious, be curious to the women of color. Ask them proactively, who are you? What drives you? What makes you laugh? What makes you cry? What makes you as you? So that's one of the things. And the other thing, be a sponsor. We really need sponsorships. We learn to work hard, carry the world upon our shoulders, but we don't learn, or we haven't learned, in how do you break open those doors. And in this, I think leaders can help us. Leading the way, or being that sponsor and opening those doors where because we're unfortunately in women of color, we can't open that door. So I think sponsorship and curiosity are the two things that I would ask leaders in 2023 to do in helping women of color.
Yes, we need that sponsorship. We can't promote ourselves, right? We can only speak our names so much in a room. We need someone else to vouch for us, to put our name in the hat, in those sorts of things. We can work hard, but we need partnership too. So thank you for that. And be curious about us. Don't be afraid of us. Don't assume you know things about us, right? Because we're not a monolith. We have different things that we're interested in. Vivian, I'd love to hear your thoughts.
I would like to build upon what Hilary just said right now and add in the ingredient of amplifying psychological safety, because with everything that you're doing or everything that you want to do to become more inclusive, if there is no psychological safety, then women will not open up. So as a leader, provide that space and that energy so that people feel safe. The second thing that I want to address is Black women, women of color, are dealing with concrete ceiling. We are not dealing with glass ceiling. You can easily break through glass, but it's much harder to break through the concrete ceiling. Therefore, we need sponsorship. The third thing that I would like to address is we need more employee resource groups or more business resource groups or more network resource groups, however you name them. We need them more. I know that in the US, it's more common. In the EU, the international companies have them, but it's not a common thing to have those network groups or those resource groups so that people can have a safe space to learn more about accelerating within their career, but also to have a safe space when something happens so that they can share best practices or share how to deal with that.
You all are both giving us so many gems, and those are things that, regardless of where you might call home, we need those things, right? So if you're a company or organization right now, institution, academic facility, whatever it might be, and even if you have 3 women of color or 5 people of color, start the business resource group, right? Everybody needs a space to thrive in when certain situations happen. Like here in the States, a couple weeks ago, there was another unarmed Black man that was murdered in California. And if you work at a space and you don't have any place to go, now someone would say, well, don't bring your personal work to business. But earlier you told me bring my authentic self. And part of that is my authentic self. So if I'm seeing my community harmed, I'm bringing that to work, and it may be triggering for me. So it would be nice to have a space where when certain things like that happen, or we need to hold leadership accountable, so it's not just one person that has to hold them, right? Or pizza parties. It can be a lot of different things and serve a lot of different reasons, but the reality is we need a space and we need sponsorship. It's the S's for me, okay? We need space to be able to be who we need to be, and we need that sponsorship, and we need that safety, all the S's, because we can have all the trainings, we can have all the talks, we can have all the book clubs, but if we're not feeling safe, then all of it is for what, right? And so that's regardless of where we are, more psychological safety. Thank you so much for this conversation. And now we're at our bonus round. This time goes by so fast. I have so many other questions I could talk. Well, that means later in the year, I'll have to get you back up at night and we'll have the conversation again. But I am a lover of grits and rap lyrics. Now, I don't know if they serve grits in the Netherlands, but first I see them shaking now. Okay, so I love grits. I'm a fan of that. So I'm just going to assume that if you guys were eating grits, you'd have them the way I eat them, which is with salt and butter. So we'll just leave it there. So the next question is, what is your favorite rap lyric and why? And we'll start with Hilary.
So, interesting bonus question. So I chose a woman here in the Netherlands. Her name is Ramon. She's 26 years old, born in East Africa, raised here in the Netherlands, and her songs are all about empowering and inspiring others while she's finding her own path. And then one of the songs that she has sing, the name is Build Me a House. And why this lyric for me is so important is because as organization, we always talk about inclusive organizations or inclusive technology, if you look at my practice. But what does inclusive mean? Is it inclusive in the way that you look at it, or did you ask me? And in her song of Build Me a House, she says, and I cannot sing, so I'm going to read it up. Now you build me a house and I run away. Hope one day you'll understand what I just couldn't say. Hope I know what home is, but for now I'm homeless. Meaning that you can create this inclusive organization, but for whom is it inclusive if you didn't ask me? So for me, it is Ramon.
Whew, mic drop, okay? All of the things, right? Like people are building these initiatives, they're talking about restorative justice, but they haven't talked to me about it. They haven't talked to you about it. So what are we solving for? Okay. And we're going to drop the link in the chat so that for those who want some more of that, that you can support that artist there. So thank you for that, Hilary. That was right on point. So we'll drop that in the chat. Build me a house. I'm going to have to go and scour the my Apple playlist and see how I can hear more of that. But Vivian, I would love to hear your favorite rap lyric and why.
I was having a hard time. I was also talking to Hilary, and we were talking about, well, a lot of those rap lyrics, right, contain a lot of swear words. But I'm still gonna share two. Kendrick Lamar, dot dot dot, don't kill my vibe, especially for the times that you need that energy. I use that song. But my favorite one is Drake. I know, Minda, you are a Drake fan, and started from the bottom. Now we're here. When I look back what I've been through and where I've been and where I am now, I am so grateful that I'm still standing, literally still standing, because the isms in the workplace, I almost lost my life because of what I've dealt with in the workplace. And luckily my son is here. He's the main reason. He's my inspiration, but also my fuel for what I'm doing. And each time that I'm going to, let's say, the trials and tribulations during for the work that I'm doing, I'm looking at my son. He's the reason why I'm striving so much. So sometimes I do take my rest to heal, but I also need to refuel myself because there's a lot of work to be done. So started from the bottom, now I'm here.
And you know my heart, Vivian. Anything related to Drake when he's not being problematic, I do love. So thank you for that. And I think that's a good reminder too, that sometimes we look at it and say, man, nothing's changed, or they're doing the same stuff they've been doing, right? But let's be honest, things are much different. When I entered the workplace, what felt like 100 years ago, and the conversations that I could never have back then, and some of the conversations I can have today about racism, could never even say that word out loud. When I entered the workplace in 2003, you know, it was like, and I wasn't even sure if it was racism because I didn't have like context for it, right? So now we get to talk about microaggressions. We get to talk about macroaggressions in a way that's allows us to heal, but it also educates those we work with as well. And so that is a good reminder on those days where we're like, is any progress being made? And the answer is yes, there is. I know it's slow in some regards, but it is. And so we're just going to keep going up from here. So thank you both for those lyrics. And the last question, each and every one of our guests is a leader, whether you have the title in your organization or not. Each of us can activate leadership at any given point, and I hope each of you will. But I'd love for you each to give a tip on how we can make the workplace better than we found it. And I'm sorry, we'll start with Vivian on this one.
If I had a seat at the table, aka the Beyonce table, Beyonce key, I will challenge every leader, everybody who wants to become an inclusive leader or wants to know more about inclusion. I want you to wear a virtual reality glass and literally walk a mile in my shoes just for 5 minutes. Just for 5 minutes, so that you can understand all the challenges that I face just for 5 minutes, but also understand what you can do and how you can unlock empathy within you, how you can understand what you need to do to make the workplace a little bit safer, a little bit better, and also a little bit more inclusive.
I love that so much. I think they all need the VR. We need to send them a care package of the VR subscription. But if they don't have the VR, they can listen to Black women. They can listen to women of color, read the books, watch the shows, right? And so they get a better understanding. I love that so much. Hilary?
I would say to every leader, every leader say, I see every one of my team. And I would challenge them to not only see them, but truly see them, truly see us for who we are. Again, be curious. And then the second thing that I would say to every leader in your position, if you go with on pension, try to, when you look back, make sure that you can say you have made a difference in at least one person's life. That are the two things that I want to say. To really see someone and make a difference for somebody's life in any way.
I love that so much. Thank you so much for just both of you for giving us the tips and the tools for being women of color in the workplace, but also those who are allies, managers. They sit at the tables, they're in the rooms, right? So even if there's none of us in that room, think about getting one of us in the room, because you can't talk about how to solve for us without us. But B, if you're not there yet, or there's none at your organization, think about being active instead of passive. How do you create an environment that supports women of color, even if there aren't any in your room right now? And so that's really, really important. And again, I just want to say thank you both for having this conversation. We can't just talk about women of color in the United States. We have to unite globally. I know we have people who watch the show in a lot of different countries, Canada, the EU, the UK, even in South America. So it's important that we look at each other as resources and how we can collaborate and help each other, because we all need it and we all need that support, and we are not alone. Hilary, how can people connect with you? What's the best way to reach you?
LinkedIn, Hilary Richters at LinkedIn.
We will drop it so they can follow you. And Vivian, what's the best way for people to connect with you?
For me, the same way, LinkedIn.
That's where we're here. Shout out to LinkedIn for sending me this sweatshirt that I'm wearing today as a creator. It's nice and cozy, and I thought it'd be great for us to have the conversation on the platform LinkedIn. And so thank you both for how you show up, how you're using your voice, how you're role modeling for us, even here in the United States. And so I will see you on the internet street. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me as well. Bye.
Bye.
Okay, I know that it's late for you all, and I'm not going to tell you to go to bed, but I'm going to let you have your time, your time back. We'll go live at the end of the month, but I'll share all those things with you all. But thank you so much. This was a really great conversation.
It was really a great conversation. And let me know when everything can be shared. Can I share it already now?
Because you can start to promote it, and then in the next probably a few days, I'll start to next week I'll start sharing the live link so people you can start teasing it out now. So
awesome.
All right,
thank you, Minda.
Thank you.
Bye.
Good night. All right, Mike, you ready?
Yeah.
Okay. That was such a great conversation. I'm glad that we can have these conversations globally, because we are not alone in this fight, and we have to, I always talk about courage and who's going to be a beneficiary of your courage. The work that we're doing here benefit other countries too, and other women, right? And vice versa. And so let's remember them as well. And so we're at the end of the show, we got to give the affirmation. So I'm going to bring Mike up so that he can close us out for that. Hey, brother, how are you?
Hey, Minda, how you doing?
Good. We had some tambourine moments on that one, right?
Absolutely. Amazing conversation. Amazing.
I've never been to the Netherlands, but I felt like I got a taste of it today. But what is our affirmation for the month?
Absolutely. Our affirmation for the month of January is every curse and spell has been broken over our life. We are free. What that simply means is whatever you are going through in your life, whatever has been spoken against you, whatever you've spoken against yourself, whatever negative thoughts you think about constantly that you think are affecting you, we're done with those. We're moving on. There has to be a place in your life, a point in your life where you seek the help you need, where you seek the counsel you need. Sometimes in our life, we just need to vent. We just need a pastor or a therapist or someone to vent. Sometimes we need a friend to tell about our childhood trauma. Sometimes we need, but at some point in your life, you have to reach toward healing to get to your next level. So everything that has ever plagued you in your life, let's move forward. It's not an easy process. We're not saying to move on today or you're done with everything that's happened. What we're simply saying is this is a new year, this is a new time and a new season. So every word that has been spoken against you that is contrary to your belief system, where you want to go, if it's not speaking to your future, then you don't need to have it. So let's do this in this new year.
Listen, if you resonate with that, put your one in the chat. Everybody should, because Every person has probably been told something by someone that's not true, or put you in a box, or you said it about yourself. When have you said, oh, I'm so stupid, or I'm this, I'm that? The words that we speak about ourselves that are contrary, as Michael said, to our belief system, we need to cut that loose too, that negative thinking. We cannot keep going into the new year, any year for that matter, mid-year, in-year, whatever the year, when you're watching this, with that type of negative self-talk. Break it all. Break those that someone said about you that ain't true. Break it about yourself. Even if it was true last week and it wasn't serving you, break it free, because that's not who you are today, right? And so it's important that we affirm ourselves. And lastly, I'll say, if you haven't got it and you need more reaffirming, maybe you don't have a community as frequent that you can tap into like here, get Mike's book at mikehartz.com. He has 300 and how many, Michael?
372 affirmations.
372 affirmations. It's an affordable read. It's worth it. It's in a various formats. So get there, get it. If you know someone who could use it, which we all do, I use those affirmations as well, because you can never get enough. Sometimes we just need that constant feeder to ourselves to remind ourselves who we are. And so thank you so much for showing up with us. I hope you're enjoying this new season of Secure the Seat. If you've missed any of our episodes, or you're just joining us, maybe you just started watching us this year, or you just came on around the holidays, you can go to our YouTube channel, put in Secure the Seat, subscribe there. All the past Secure the Seat episodes are there. Listen to them. They hit very different depending, maybe guess 5 months ago, you're like, oh, I'm not in that space right now. And you're like, wait a second, I need some extra support. Go in there. There's something for everybody, not just women of color, leaders, managers, allies, etc. So keep securing your seat. We'll see you next week.